Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for another episode of The Angry Doctor. I am Joel Keenan, an internist in southern Maine, and I want to talk to you today about the measles epidemic, which we shouldn't need to do. There didn't used to be a problem with measles at all in the United States, but there is now. So let's talk about why that happened, how it happened, who's at fault, and what we can do to fix it. Measles, as you know, is a viral illness. It occurs with a 7 to 14 day, 1 to 2 week incubation period when you don't have any symptoms, but can still transmit the disease. That's part of what makes it a dangerous illness. You can give it to people without knowing you have it or that you're giving it to them. And that's followed by a phase called the prodromal phase, which we're taught in medical school to think of as the 3 C's: cough, coryza, and conjunctivitis. Coryza is a runny nose, so it's upper respiratory congestion, typically accompanied by a fever, and also during that period you can have little white spots on what are called the buccal mucosa, the inside of your mouth. And if you see those in that context of congestion and a fever, that's diagnostic, that's pathognomonic for measles. You've got measles. That prodromal phase is followed by the rash phase for a few days, classically consisting of a rash that begins behind the ears and the face and then extending into the trunk. And then that phase is followed by the 4th and final phase, the recovery phase, where you get better. And for most people, that's it. That's what happens with measles. But not everybody. 20 to 25% of people who get measles will require hospitalization. 1 in 20 children who get measles will get pneumonia. Some people who get measles will have permanent vision or hearing loss. Some people who get measles will recover from the measles, but then have years or decades of immunosuppression when they are susceptible to other diseases, including fatal diseases. Between 1 in 3 and 1,000 people who get measles will die from it. Of the people who get measles and recover completely, 7 to 10 years later, 1 in 1,000 of those people will get an infection to the brain called panencephalitis that is 100% fatal. So measles is a real risky and dangerous disease. And that begs the question, how did this happen? Because we know we had the vaccine in 1963, and then in 1971 came the combination MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, and rubella. And these vaccines were given to just about everybody who was eligible, and they worked. By the turn of the last century, we had eradicated measles in the United States. So what went wrong after that? First, what came next? In 2019, there was a harbinger of things to come. There was an outbreak in an Orthodox Jewish community in New York. Someone had brought the illness back from Israel, and there was a perfect storm. That community was densely populated with a lot of kids, and among those kids were a high proportion who had religious vaccine exemptions, so they hadn't been vaccinated for that reason. And that community had a high proportion of vaccine skeptical parents, people who just didn't believe in vaccines, so they didn't have their kids vaccinated. And so there was an outbreak, and that came and went. And then last year came basically a reproduction of that event, this time in a Christian community in Texas among Mennonites. And the same thing happened. There was an outbreak, and this time it really flourished and spread. There were over 2,000 cases in the United States last year. 45 of 50 states have had measles cases. All 50 states are going to have them. Maine is not among them yet, but we will be. It's coming. How'd this happen? Why did it happen? I remember during the COVID outbreak, when that whole thing was going on, and you recall there was controversy about the government's management of that, And people started becoming very skeptical about the vaccine, including the COVID vaccine and treatment for COVID with Paxlovid, and arguing for alternative treatments. And there was this cliche that became popular: do your own research. You ever hear people say that? That was very popular around that time. Do your own research. And what could be wrong with that? That's like saying think. Nothing wrong with thinking for yourself. But that's not what that phrase meant at all. It didn't mean think for yourself. It meant consider your ideas as informed and plausible as an expert's idea. And feel free to dismiss that expert's idea. That's what do your own research really meant. And I remember getting, people would send me papers because I'm a doctor, and they'd say, well, take a look at this. I think I've got this new way of treating COVID that you don't have to use the vaccine. There's other ways to do it. And I remember getting one paper that involved the use of ivermectin. That's an anti-parasite drug that was being considered to treat COVID. It doesn't, but it was being considered for it. And in this paper, they looked at 24 or 25 people, all of them hospitalized for COVID. And all of them were given ivermectin, and all of them recovered. And you get the inference from that, oh, ivermectin treats COVID. It's a ridiculous inference. If Bobo the Clown goes to the Sunoco station and buys a Twix candy bar and a Diet Pepsi and a lottery ticket for which he picks the numbers, and Bobo goes home that night, turns on the TV, and finds out, wow, he hit the lottery, he's a millionaire. You and I know what Bobo did to win the lottery. He bought the winning ticket. But in the case of this ivermectin study, we have no way of knowing, based on that study, whether the ivermectin was the Twix candy bar or the Diet Pepsi or the winning lottery ticket. There's no way to tell. And much larger studies, better designed studies that had control samples and other things, that the power, the size of the study, the ability to eliminate confounding factors. We know that the ivermectin had nothing to do with recovery from COVID. It was, among other things, the immunocompetence of all 24 or 25 people who were hospitalized, along probably with some other ancillary factors like IV fluids if needed, maybe supplemental oxygen, healthy food and drink, rest, support from nurses. Those things contributed to make people get better, not the ivermectin. But people have become confident, really confident, that absent any common sense or certainly any knowledge of statistics or immunology, that their opinions are just as valid as somebody who has spent years and decades studying a problem. That's bad enough. But those people have also elected people who respect those points of view and are advancing them. And that has caused a real problem. Dr. Kirk Malone is the chairman of the President's Vaccine Advisory Committee. And it was Dr. Malone who advised making polio and measles vaccines subject to parental consent. And it was Dr. Malone who said, if there's no choice, then informed consent is an illusion. Without consent, it is medical battery. He was saying you can't insist people get a measles vaccine because doing that violates the principle of informed consent. Just amazing. Let's look at that. Informed consent, as you know, is the principle that says if you're treating somebody for something, the patient has the right to two things above all: being informed, knowing what the pros and cons of the treatment are, and the right to consent, which means the right to refuse. It's got to be voluntary. That's the principle of informed consent. Having information and being able to say, no thanks. Well, look, the measles vaccine, the regulations for the measles vaccine requiring people to get the measles vaccine does not violate informed consent. You can refuse to get it. You just can't do the things you need to do if you're going to have the measles vaccine. For example, you can't go to public school if you're not vaccinated. In my case, I couldn't become a physician if I didn't get certain vaccines, including MMR and hepatitis vaccines and things like that. That didn't mean I had to get the vaccine. I could say no, but I just couldn't practice medicine, that's all. Is that coercive? Yeah, sure. Lots of things are coercive. You're not allowed to shoot your neighbor, you go to jail. You have to wear a seatbelt or you get a ticket. You have to pay taxes or you go to prison. Lots of things are coercive in the interest of the public good. That doesn't mean that requiring a measles vaccine violates informed consent. It doesn't. Nobody goes to jail who doesn't get a measles vaccine. And he knows this. That's not all Dr. Malone said. When he was interviewed, a reporter said to him, "Look, Dr. Malone, you know that people who don't get vaccinated for measles and who get measles, and by the way, of all the cases of measles that we've had in the United States last year and this, over 90% are among people who did not get vaccinated or were ineligible for the vaccine. That's the overwhelming reason you get measles. Don't get the vaccine. You're at much, much higher risk for measles, obviously." The reporter said, "Aren't you going to feel sad if someone gets measles because they didn't get the vaccine, because you gave them that option, and then they die?" And he replied, "Sure, I'll be sad. I'm also saddened when people die of alcoholic diseases." What a great point. Because, of course, alcohol is legal. And we know that alcoholism is just like measles, in that when your alcoholic Uncle Bob comes over to see you for Thanksgiving and gives you a hug and a kiss, you can catch his alcoholism by him doing that to you. You know that, don't you? Of course you don't know that. It's not true. Alcoholism is not contagious. Measles is contagious. Alcoholism is not. It's an absurd and inapt comparison. He knows that. Dr. Malone knows that. He went to Jefferson Medical College, graduated, got his MD, completed an internship and residency, and then a fellowship in pediatric cardiology. He's a bright guy. He knows alcoholism and measles are not comparable. He knows telling people you got to get a vaccine does not violate informed consent. Why is he saying this stuff? He's not saying it out of intellectual honesty. He's being intellectually dishonest. There's no argument to be had with this man. He's not taking the debate seriously. He knows better. He's just trying to get something done. He's just trying to implement a public policy, and common sense and the facts be damned. So that's a problem. And he's not the only guy doing it. The Florida state legislature has made some vaccines optional and is considering bills to make all vaccines optional. That's a disaster in progress, because unfortunately, residents of Florida don't stay in Florida. A lot of them are coming back to Maine shortly. And are they bringing measles with them? Yeah. Or from Texas, or from Alabama, or from some other state that has vaccine permissiveness. It's going to happen. Susan Collins, my senator, voted to confirm Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who appointed Dr. Malone to his position. A lot of important people have made important decisions to create this crisis, this epidemic. And they are not going to stop. They're dead serious about what they're doing. And they're not interested in having an honest debate. Dr. Malone certainly isn't. So, it's up to us to try to stop them. And we're not doing a good job. Things are not going well. Things are heading in the wrong direction. We're going to have more measles this year than we did last year, for sure. And the people in charge are sanguine about that. They're copacetic with it. So we've got to try harder. whatever we're doing, we've got to try harder. This is a big problem, and it is up to us to stop it. This is our burden. This is our responsibility. I'm not a fan of Secretary Kennedy, but as a young man, I was a real fan of his father, the late Senator Robert F. Kennedy, who, and I'll leave you with this, he said this about his father, Joseph P. Kennedy. He said, "There was no such thing as half trying. We were to try, and we were to try harder than anyone else. We might not be the best, and none of us were, but we were to make the effort to be the best. After you have done the best you can," he used to say, "the hell with it." That's a good attitude. That's a good philosophy. Let's embrace that. Good to see you all. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.